Hello everyone, I'm Brazen Eagle and thank you for joining me here. So today we have a channel first. We have an article from CNN that was actually posted about a week or two ago. So, women aren't better at multitasking after all, study says. If you've ever fallen back on the old adage or the stereotype that women are somehow better at multitasking than men, a study released Wednesday may make you change your tune. The study was conducted by two university psychologists in Germany and published in the journal PLOS ONE. It found that when faced with the most common forms of multitasking, men and women of similar age and physical and cognitive abilities performed to almost the exact same level. Researchers asked 96 men and women to complete simple sets of tasks that were combined to mimic the different ways people typically multitask. Sometimes people perform two tasks at once. Sometimes they start a second task before the first is done. Sometimes they switch back and forth. Often the two tasks require two very different sets of cognitive demands. Multitasking resulted in substantial performance costs across all experimental conditions without a single significant gender difference in any of these 10 measurements, even when controlling for gender differences in underlying cognitive abilities, the authors concluded. Thus, our results do not confirm the widespread stereotype that women are better at multitasking than men, at least in the popular sequential and concurrent multitasking settings used in the present study. In other words, multitasking in general hurts performances in both tasks, but gender, really biological sex, doesn't seem to have anything to do with it. The researchers note that some research has found sex differences in both multitasking and the cognitive abilities required to do so. For instance, studies have found women to have an edge on multitasking, but men to have, to say, better spatial reasoning abilities. However, the researchers on the new study argue that their experimental process best compares apples to apples the abilities of men and women and the conditions under which they usually multitask. Now, before you go waving this in the face of your wife or your partner, remember that the study found the two sexes performed equally well. Gender means nothing. So maybe instead of gloating, you could, take a task or two off their plate for science. Well, thank you for your little ideological bent at the end, CNN. Anyways, well, definitely a channel first. I've never used CNN before, but I thought this article was quite interesting. That they gave us some sort of truth about men and women. So, this was a study done in Germany and found that, of course, the conventional myth that women were better multitaskers than men, and that this adage, this idea, is either dead or at the very least being questioned. Now, we often hear that women are generally better multitaskers than men, and men were better at focusing on things, but apparently, it doesn't matter what sex you are. You will suck at multitasking. I like how they kept using the word gender instead of biological sex within this article, but as I stated very recently, gender means nothing, it just depends on how you feel, and biological sex tells you so much more information that you would rather know than about someone's stupid gender. Anyways, now, the idea of women being good at multitasking was probably a way to retain the idea that men and women are unequal but complementary. This is what you usually hear from traditional conservative type of people. This idea that men are better at some things than women, and women are better at other things than men, and that they can cover each other's bases, is a lie. The only things that women can outperform men, in general, are in childbirth, because men can't give birth, early childhood development, because men can't, lactate, and being flexible in certain sports, like gymnastics, or even maybe ice skating. Things like that. Men, however, in general, are smarter, faster, stronger, and more resilient in the face of opposition. It's just nature. Men were built that way, in general. Now, you'll find some men that are extremely scrawny, versus some women who are fairly bulky. And women, those types of women might be able to compete against very, very scrawny men, but in general, men outperform women in mostly everything. There's a reason why there's an NBA and a WNBA. So, women, unfortunately, don't really complement men. If anything, when you add a woman to a man's life, women can be seen just kind of merely as a burden on men and their resources. Of course, minus the ability to have children and the possibility of procreating and having sex. Now, Napoleon understood this. He understood 200 years ago that women are nothing but machines for producing children, producing the next generation of men. Why would you use women if men could basically, in general, outperform them in almost everything? Doesn't make sense. Now, this old idea of women being multitaskers, while men are more focused, flies in the face of equality. Equality would say that men and women are equal in every single regard, or at least in most regards. There are no differences between the sexes, but in general, natural order doesn't lie. Radical equality pushes an ideology that will end in disaster. Inequality will always persist and be a part of human nature. There's just nothing we can do about it. By pushing the narrative that everyone is equal, you don't bring people up to the level that others at which they are succeeding. You merely pull the most successful people down to the bottom level of society. You cannot pull people up to those that are succeeding. You can only drag the successful down. This doesn't help anyone. Just look at affirmative action. If women were as equal to men as leftists claim, then the leftists wouldn't need to give women an unfair advantage over men. The only way women are able to rise to a higher rank within a company or whatever it may be, the only way to do that is to hurt the men and pull men down that can already outperform the women when they have the same opportunity. Equality is just a lie. But I thought this was a very interesting article to bring up with you guys, because like I said before, I never use CNN. Never even consider it. But, even CNN, one time out of a lifetime, can be fairly interesting. So anyways, thank you very much for watching. I'm Brazen Eagle, and I hope you really do have a great day.